The Charles in Toronto wants to ask a question about, I don't know, the something beyond the material. How you doing, Charles? You're on with Shane and Matt.
What's going on?
Hey, Matt. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thanks.
Yeah. So my question was, and I'm just going along with my Google definition of agnostics. So is it correct to say part of the definition of being an agnostic is that you don't believe that anything beyond the material phenomena is knowable?
Well, not necessarily. So agnosticism isn't really a word that speaks to belief. It's a word that speaks to knowledge. So you could be an agnostic theist. You would be someone who, I have a friend who's an agnostic theist. He believes in a God, but he admits that he doesn't know. So
he admits that he doesn't know. Okay. What would you say to that, Matt? Would you say, do you accept anything that is beyond, observable material phenomena? That they can possibly exist, and that it's, yeah.
I don't know if it can possibly. So there. First of all, agnosticism is irrelevant to this. The only issue is: are you a philosophical naturalist, a philosophical materialist? Do you assert that the natural material world is in fact all that exists, or are you someone like me who is a methodological naturalist, which just acknowledges that the natural world is all that we can verify to exist? I can't tell you what might possibly exist. Possibility needs to be demonstrated, as does probability, as does actuality.
Yes.
Do I believe in anything supernatural or spiritual? No, because nothing supernatural or spiritual has been demonstrated to even possibly exist and be supported by sufficient evidence to warrant belief.
Right. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the evidence that you're looking at, they're using science, it's in the observable universe. So it's sort of like the physical universe that we're in. Is that correct?
Is there some other universe? If there's some other universe beyond the observable physical universe, wouldn't you have to demonstrate that that universe exists before we can even address it?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, let's say when God interacts with you, he could interact with you through the physical world without breaking the laws of physics, which a non-believer could attribute to simply chance or just random occurrence in our universe.
Hang on.
Again, without the right.
Charles. Charles.
Yeah.
I'm confused because you're describing, hey, God could talk to you in this way. First of all, how do you know that?
Right, because I have personally experienced it.
Okay, but that's not how you know something.
Yeah.
That's not how you know something. You can't just say yes and go on.
Yeah. Okay. So my response.
Why is it when I say you can't just say yes and go on, your response is yeah, and then you go on?
Well, my response to that is, I understand what you're saying. If let's say yesterday I tripped and fell, I have a scar to prove it. That's physical evidence right there. And I tell you the story. I experienced this. I tripped and I hit my knee or whatever. Here's a scar. Here's somebody else who saw the same thing happen to me from a third-person perspective. So there's physical evidence for that.
Well, it supports it. It doesn't necessarily prove that that's how you got the scar, but it supports what you're saying.
Sure. Can you do anything remotely close to that for God?
Yeah. So
cool. Let's do it. Let's do it right now. I want you to tell me the thing that is just like a scraped knee. Hang on. That is just like a scraped knee for God, that has physical evidence and independent confirmation from a third party, that is so that your evidence for God is just like your evidence for scraping your knee yesterday. Let's go.
Yeah. Actually, when I say I don't mean I'm going to do it now. But what I mean by that is
goodbye.
I'm just no. Yeah. I'm just accepting your point. But what I want to say is,
Thomas, Charles, sorry, can you do it or not? You just said you could do it, and now you say you're not going to do it now.
I can say this. I can't do it, but I know God can if he's willing.
Okay,
Then
that's not really helpful for us.
so
If you're saying
this is do it.
this is what I want to know. Is there a metaphorical equivalent that you have to the scraped knee? Do you have that metaphorical equivalent?
Metaphorical equivalent. Well, okay. Metaphorical equivalent for spiritual. Let's say God interacts
To the scraped
with,
knee. That is a yes or no thing. It's not complicated. Do you have the metaphorical equivalent to the scraped knee?
Yeah,
You do.
yeah,
Okay. What is it?
Yeah.
Are you going to tell us?
Yeah, of course. So
Okay.
let's say God
Let's get on to that.
spiritually. Yeah. So let's say God interacts with me spiritually. First, God knows what he did. And myself, spiritually, I understand that God has interacted with me. And also anything in the spiritual realm, this includes Satan himself,
Charles,
angels, demons.
How do I know that this happened, though?
Charles, you haven't. Do you understand what? So Shane is asking you for the metaphorical equivalent, or let's say the thing that you experience spiritually that is analogous to a scraped knee, and you're nowhere near anything remotely like that.
You're kind of just describing the scraping of the knee as opposed to showing us the scrape.
Right.
Yeah. So here's the thing. When it comes to the scraping of the knee, I can just show you the physical, the scrape. You can witness it happen in the physical world.
Right, and you have a metaphorical equivalent to it.
Yeah.
Right.
But
so what is it?
What is it?
Okay. So what I'm saying is you can't use your eyes to see because but by nature it's spiritual, it's not physical. So you can't use your flesh eyes to see.
This is your problem.
Let me ask you, do you consider yourself to be an honest person?
I do.
Okay.
For the most part.
If I came to you and said, hey, my belief in fairies is just as evidence is just as reasonably sourced as my belief that, I scraped my knee yesterday. And then you asked me to provide evidence of the experience of fairy interactions. And I started by saying that I could do it. And then I retracted that and said I couldn't do it. And then when asked to give a metaphor for it, I talked about what the experience would be like for me and what the experience would be like for fairies. And then after some more conversation, I finally got to the point where I said, well, I can't show you anything you can actually see. Would you consider me to be honest?
Well,
That's a simple question.
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is, yes, Matt, I can't.
No, now you're muted.
Okay.
Shane, am I misunderstanding what he's saying?
No, I don't think so. And I think I'm just going to try to make an effort to steel man it. And I think what he's saying is that he's describing an event that's taking place in the supernatural. Science only verifies that science is the study of the natural world, right? So if something supernatural exists, science isn't going to be something that we can observe. Anything supernatural we can't observe. But he's trying to argue that he has some metaphorical equivalent to that scraped knee that we can observe, but it's not observable. Yeah. So we need to establish, is it observable or is it not observable? Because I'm sorry, but a testimony isn't going to convince me.
Hang on.
It's going to convince me that you believe it.
Hang on. Charles, I had you on mute the whole time. And when I take you off mute, you're talking. Were you sitting there talking the entire time?
No. I was listening to you. Yeah, okay. I was listening.
Okay, if you were listening, then what did Shane say?
Yeah. So Shane was explaining that the science being observing the material world cannot observe the supernatural. I don't like to use the word supernatural. I like to use the word spiritual world.
Why?
Things involving spirit.
Why? Because
we can grant that. That's fine with spiritual world, but let's just roll with it. I just want to see.
Yeah.
There's a legitimate problem there, in that the natural world has a definition that is contrasted by there being something that goes beyond the natural world. You don't want to use the word supernatural. You want to use the word spiritual. Well, please define spiritual. You haven't defined it.
Well, my problem is when you begin describing something interacting with the natural world, all of a sudden it should be something we have evidence of, and you just keep saying you have this evidence.
Okay. So spirit is something that is by definition the opposite of material.
No, that's not
something
it.
that is not.
No, by definition, the opposite of material is non-material. The opposite of, or the thing that transcends the world is supernatural, the words that you don't want to use. So I'm trying to figure out why you're so hung up on using the word spirit when everything, when it's not going to get us anything. Can you demonstrate that there's a spirit?
Yeah. So, sorry,
no,
when
no,
I say yeah,
no,
I don't mean
and continue.
I just
no, stop, Charles. I apologize because I'm 72 hours free of nicotine and I'm ready to rip somebody's fucking head off, and I'm hoping it's not yours. But if I say, can you demonstrate this? If I say, can you demonstrate this spirit? And you say, I don't think you're saying yes as an answer to my question, because you, as is evidence for just right now, you just say over and over and over. You're doing it right now while I'm fucking talking. So pause. Can you demonstrate spirit?
I can ask God's spirit to reveal himself, but only if God is willing.
So the answer
is he willing?
Yes. If God is willing.
Okay, then where's this revelation at that we can observe?
No, this is it, Shane. He wasn't saying yes in answer to your question. He was saying yes because yes is his verbal tick. He doesn't know.
That's correct, yeah.
Charles, you don't know if God's willing.
Okay,
right?
It looks like what you're kind of going back and forth here, because you're trying to give us something that we can observe, but you're prefacing it by explaining that we wouldn't be able to observe it. That's part of the problem here.
You can only demonstrate it if God wants you to.
Yes.
So how do we find out if God wants you to?
Okay, but you're saying he doesn't want you to, so everything you're saying is useless.
No, I'm not saying he doesn't want me to.
Okay.
What I'm saying is when
it seems like he doesn't want you to.
How do we find out?
So
how do we find out if God wants you to demonstrate this?
How do you find out if God wants you to demonstrate, or wants me to demonstrate this? Well, God can speak to me personally, or God can speak to me personally.
Has he?
I believe me being on this call, I believe God has called to. God has called me to be on this call.
Great. Because
if I was in the studio, this would be the first time that I hung up on someone.
No, stop. This makes this really fucking easy. You are convinced that God wants you to be on this call. Now, does that mean that God wants you to fail to demonstrate something on his behalf or to succeed?
God wants me to succeed in explaining his word.
Then make the demonstration, Charles. All the pressure's on you. God has put all the pressure on your shoulders to make the demonstration.
Yes. Okay, so I can ask God, right now, God, Jesus, if it is according to your will to demonstrate.
You already decided it was according to his will. Why are you asking him now? Shouldn't you ask him before you fucking called us?
It's his will for me to be on this call, but since you've asked for me to demonstrate him in this specific way, which is he revealed his spirit to you guys, to anybody who listens to this call.
Continue being on this call?
Yes.
Wrong answer. Goodbye. I just proved that you're wrong about God, because if it was God's will for you to stay on the call, then I shouldn't have been able to hang up on you, but I did.
Right. Well, unless you're more powerful than God. Which
I could be more powerful than God.
I don't think he would accept that, but, mysterious ways, Matt.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like, people have called this. I'm glad I figured out that yes was his verbal tick, because I'm like, he's saying yes to everything reflexively.
Yeah, he's not actually answering you. He's just waiting. He just uses that, like you said, verbal tick. He's just waiting for his turn to talk.
It's like we were in an improv comedy and he was like, yes and. Yeah. Does God want you to demonstrate spirit? Cool. Then why didn't he equip you to do it? Why did he make us do this tap dance rigmarole? Why did he say, send you to a call where you can be like, oh, well, this is only if God wants me to? I thought we established that. Anyway,